Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Joe Salemi with DynaSCAPE Software, and thank you for joining us for the Strategic Financial Leadership webinar series. Today is part one, Emerging Technologies in the Landscape Industry, what you need to know to thrive. We have Steve Coffrin here from the Cultivar Group. Steve, thanks so much for joining us today. You're here with us, Steve?
Yeah. Yep, you're welcome.
Awesome, thanks. So three-part webinar series we put together, a really interesting set of webinars for everyone. We've got people registered, Steve, from all over the world. We've had people from Australia, New Zealand, Portugal, Spain, Brazil that have registered. So the work that we did in putting this webinar together and getting the word out has certainly made waves all over the place. So there's
That's
definitely
great.
something to that, yeah. So our hosts for today, be myself and Steve, and we're really happy to be able to bring this to you. It's been in the works for some time, and something that DynaSCAPE has wanted to do for a long time. And coming across a great guy like Steve and his firm, the Cultivar Group, doing great things for landscape professionals all over the United States. Really good work that you guys are doing, helping landscape businesses with their finances and getting businesses on track. So a bit before we start, a little bit of housekeeping. All three webinars are going to be recorded. So I am recording this webinar right now, and we will be posting all of the recordings to our website. So fear not if you can't join us live or you have to deke out midway through. We are recording, so please don't worry about that. Everything will be posted to the website. And we are going to have time at the end of the webinar for some Q&A. There is a question box in your control panel in GoToWebinar. Put your questions in there. I'll be monitoring them. And at the end of the webinar, we'll throw the questions at Steve and see what kind of answers he has for us. So please use that question box. That is the only spot you have to be able to answer questions. And Steve, I think it's time to pass it over to you and we'll get the webinar started.
All right, perfect. Thank you so much, Joe. And let's go ahead. We're live on my screen.
Perfect.
I believe you guys can all see that, correct?
Yeah, oh, yeah.
All right, yeah, perfect. Yeah, I met Joe years ago down at the TNLA Expo. I was speaking on some estimating principles, and that's how we ran into each other. And DynaSCAPE is a great company to work with. They definitely fit with our style of simplicity and innovation. So their products are really easy and streamlined to use. And so I was recently down at the TNLA Expo down in Dallas, and Joe and I met and had lunch, and we were talking about advancing this program even more and some ideas that we had to bring value to everybody who's on the phone today. So definitely excited that we made things happen, and here we are today talking about emerging technologies in the landscape industry, and really what are the key things and key principles that you as a contractor need to know in order to thrive, and really in order to survive as well, because things are definitely changing. So a little bit about me. I mean, you can read this on your own. Connect with me on LinkedIn and see the profile. I don't want to waste a whole lot of your time going through my bio and background, but I'll say I had a design build business for 13 years. I worked with companies across the country in the construction industry, including a lot of landscape companies. I'm really passionate about business and helping companies thrive, and the mistakes that I've made in life and the mistakes that I see clients make, and also the good things that people have done, bringing all those things and culminating all those experiences together to help companies really thrive. That's really what I'm passionate about. That's what I loved. I did my MBA at the Fuqua School of Business at Duke University while studying abroad in multiple countries. So a lot of different experiences that I hope I could bring value to your business specifically. So let's talk about the context. Let's start off with the context, and this context and background is going to be relevant across all three presentations. So I want to start with this, and this is really going to help us kick off the technology discussion. But what's going on in our industry? And oftentimes you'll hear me talk about, I'll say the word construction industry, and when I'm talking about the construction industry, I'm talking about the whole building and maintenance community. Some of sometimes I'll be referencing broad statistics because landscaping may not have the very specific research that's provided for the whole construction industry. Other times I'll be referencing the landscape industry, but I really see these as synonymous. These trends are definitely relevant whether I'm referring to the whole construction industry or the landscape industry. So just kind of a heads up on that. But what's going on in our industry? So if you look here, back in 1985, the average age of the worker was 36 years old, and now it's 43 years or older. And actually, in fact, 50% of our workforce is actually 45 years or older. So we have this workforce that is aging. Okay. Now, along with that comes some implications, which I'll explain here in just a minute. But we have this aging workforce, and we have a real issue of attracting younger people into our industry, which is going to create a vicious cycle for us if we can improve. But all these things, this aging workforce and the productivity, you can see on the right-hand side, there's a graph. You see the blue line, that is all other industries besides construction. And all other industries are innovating, becoming more efficient, they're improving their processes, right? They're becoming more productive. And then the construction industry, represented by the green line, is declining. Okay, so we're declining as an industry in productivity when all other industries are becoming more productive. Okay, everybody that I talk to in the industry, in the landscape industry, everybody needs workers. There's definitely a shortage of skilled and qualified workers, especially since 2008. So when I had my landscape company back in 2005, we were rocking and rolling, and we would get applications all the time for workers. And if I needed 10 new employees to start on Monday to pick up some extra jobs that were starting, it'd be no problem to find them. Nowadays, I deal with owners, and oftentimes they complain because their whole entire crew, even crews that are loyal to them, they just turn in their keys, turn in their phones, and they walk away. And they go to another company who's offering $1 or $2 more an hour. So we're definitely dealing with a labor shortage gap. In the construction industry, including all trades, we need 1.6 million jobs between now and 2022 to be filled, but we're not filling them quick enough. So if you look here on this graph, the dark blue line represents natural growth, natural job growth in the US, and the light blue line represents international growth, so growth from immigration. So you'll see here that in the 90s, right, in early 2000s, we had pretty decent labor growth, job growth. And this is what I was talking about back in 2005 when it was easy to just pick up extra workers to deal with the extra demand. But now you see the demand and the demand's increasing while the labor supply is decreasing. But what's more troubling, see the dotted line that splits the screen? On the right-hand side of the dotted line, this is 2015 and beyond. What's troubling is the dark blue line that represents a downward trend. So really, this represents that we're going to have negative job growth, okay? Negative job growth, negative working age population growth. The only thing that's saving us and keeping us above zero is the light blue, which is international growth. The reason why I put this slide on here is that to show the degree and the severity of this labor shortage that's coming our way. And the only thing that's saving us, like I said, is international growth. This is assuming that we're not going to have any changes to immigration, and this assumes that we're not going to be building any walls to keep people out. So, I mean, if immigration changes, we are definitely going to be in a war, a straight out war for talent. And this ties into technology because if our businesses don't adopt the technology needed to increase productivity, we're really going to run into some issues when it comes into keeping up with building demand or maintenance demand. What's even more troubling is that the National Association of Home Builders, they did a survey with 18 to 25-year-olds. So they surveyed 2001 18 to 25-year-olds, and they asked them, how likely are you to enter in the construction industry given these different salaries ranges? And what's fascinating is that 43% said, I will not consider a job in the industry irrespective of pay. So 43% flat out said, hey, I'm not interested. 21% said, hey, pay me 100 grand a year at entry level, and I'll consider it, which is basically another way of saying no. So we got 2/3 of 18 to 25-year-olds who were surveyed who said, look, I'm not interested in entering the industry. Now, when I show this stat and I talk to different owners, the millennial question always gets brought up, and they say, well, how do we motivate millennials? Millennials they're entitled, they're lazy, they're hard to keep around. And I say, maybe it's not the fact that millennials are entitled. Maybe it's the fact that your business is just boring, right? So if you turn it inside out and look at really from their perspective, what's going on, maybe you'll understand the broader context. So I can tell you, I have two younger brothers, they're millennials, and they are some of the hardest workers that I know. And I know a lot of other millennials out there that are definitely hard workers. So what's really going on and what's the true story? Well, if you look here, we have the largest population, okay, 90 million millennials, plus or minus, that are coming through the workforce. They're the most educated workforce in the history of the US, but they're also coming out with tremendous student debt, okay? 30% of 18 to 30-year-olds still live with their parents in the US. Okay, so we have kids that are living with their parents, they're coming out with a lot of debt, and they need to enter in fields where they're gonna make enough money to live on their own with the cost of living rising and where they could pay off their student debt. So I had classmates in my master's program, they were getting out of school and they were paying $1,500 a month just to service their debt. So, I mean, you can imagine the burden that is put on people. So the most educated workforce, they're coming with debt, they want to get out on their own, but they need to make enough money. So they need to enter in jobs that are going to pay them enough. And sometimes the landscape industry is downplayed and people don't understand the tremendous opportunity that's available because it's not being marketed and communicated correctly, and because businesses aren't innovating enough to attract the right talent pool. Let me explain a little bit further. The construction industry, McKinsey did a research project on all the different industries, and what they found is the construction industry is the least digitized industry above agriculture and hunting. Okay, so what this means is that our industry, we're relying heavily on paper processes, paper checklist, right? Or just not digital forms of communication and digital processes. They're all very mechanical, paper reliant. So what this shows me is not necessarily, it's not necessarily a dig on our industry. I see it more as a tremendous opportunity. So everybody who's listening, there's a tremendous opportunity for our industry to digitize, to innovate, and to become differentiated and become market leaders. So this is, I think this is really exciting to me. You know, anytime you hit rock bottom, there's no other way, no other path to take than to go up. So that's the way that I look at this. And also, I think the construction industry, landscape industry, it's a great industry because you're actually building something tangible or you're maintaining something. When I was doing my MBA program, a lot of classmates would look at me and they'd say, really, why do you have a construction consulting company? Why don't you want to get into tech or healthcare? And I said, the big thing is because I love the fact that we're actually building something, building a legacy, and I could be a part of that. So I love that. So I think there's tremendous opportunity. But it means that companies, they have to change, and they have to change their strategies and solve problems, the new problems, with new techniques. So what am I talking about here? So too many companies are trying to solve these new problems with old strategies, and customers are getting fed up, okay? So what do companies do? 20% of jobs take longer to complete than they originally scheduled. 80% of those are over budget. Customers are getting change orders in the middle of projects. They're overrunning the budget. And what this is leading to is that 39% of customers decrease their spending after one bad experience. Okay, 17% of customers, they stop altogether. They will not use you again, or they cut off the contract or whatever it may be, but this is how they're responding. So what a crazy concept, because if you think about construction, all the way from the initial meeting to the design phase to pre-construction, construction, to closing out the job, finishing the punch list, to maintaining the property, that whole entire customer journey, there's so many touch points that you have to get right. And if they have a bad experience along the way, they're going to stop spending, or they're going to give you a bad reference, or they're going to give you a bad review on social media and cause some damage to your reputation. This is why digitization and emerging technologies can help streamline our processes so customers have a better experience. Because really that's what it's all about, is how can we develop processes and activities in order to deliver an exceptional, relevant customer experience. And technology can help with that. Technology can also help with profit erosion. So this is a diagram that I created, and you see here on the left-hand side, the estimated profit column. This is your estimated profit you put on a job. So you bid out a job, you come up with all your costs. You use the multiple overhead recovery process, or a fixed markup process, or however you mark up your costs to do your estimating, and you have your estimated profit in there. And then you submit the bid, and then you start work, and along the way, mistakes happen, right? You're working off the wrong type of version of plans. So the field's working off a plant list that's old, and now you have a new plant list, or some things changed and it's not in real time. Non-recoverable change orders because you're using paper processes and you're out in the field, and the customer says, hey, let's move this boulder here, can we add a wall here? And you have it written down on a piece of paper, and then you have to go back to the office and enter it into your Excel spreadsheet or whatever you use, and then you have to type it up and send an email. This could all be streamlined through technology in the right project management and estimating software. Scope creep occurs because people out in the field, they don't have real-time information about the job in order to stop extras from occurring and stop scope creep from occurring. Rework occurs, like I said, miscommunication. They don't have plans digitized, and then discounts and write-offs that we have to give the customer because they're having a bad experience and keep them happy. And what we end up with is this actual profit, the green bar, and along the way we have this giant profit erosion. So you'll hear me repeat this, but oftentimes companies say, I can't afford to adopt technology, right? It's too much money. Or they say, no, we are just too busy, we're slammed to even thinking about adopting technology. And I come back and say, how much is it costing you to not adopt technology? That's really the bigger question. I mean, if a piece of technology costs $10,000 to implement, and then you have to pay a monthly fee, I mean, that's nothing. I mean, you can make that up on all the profit that's eroding on your jobs by misbidding jobs, mismanaging them, and so on and so forth. So this is the slide of profit erosion. I think people so often, they're trying to save pennies, and at the same time, they're losing dollars in other parts of the business. So companies can reinvent themselves to attract the right type of talent. So I talked about the labor pool at the beginning, and the reason why is because you're not going to attract the right type of talent, and the top talent isn't going to want to come to your company if you're relying on paper processes, which creates more work for them, and it screws up the work-life balance. If it's just not an exciting, innovative place to work. I mean, if you're coming out of school with a bunch of education, a bunch of knowledge, and then you go to a company that's very archaic, right? You're not going to be able to use your skills and your abilities and your talents, and there's going to be a mismatch. You're not going to want to work for them. So the companies that can reinvent themselves and be innovative, okay, have cutting edge tools, be innovative in their processes, and the customer, creating a great customer experience. And it's fun working with customers, and customers enjoy working with them. This is going to attract the right people. And as you attract the right people and you build those capabilities of the people, you are going to be a winner. This is an adoption curve here in this chart. Okay, on the left-hand side, these are the innovators. They started adopting technology. They started adopting new strategies to make them more innovative. You have some early adopters that catch on, and then eventually the early majority catch on. And then after a while, people start realizing, oh man, I'm going to have to switch to digital solutions. And those are the late majority and the laggards. The key of this graph is that those who can get in at the beginning, they capture the big upside. That's represented on the left side of the graph. They capture the greater profits. If you get in on the right side of the graph, that's where you're just catching up. Then it becomes more of an expense, a cost of the business, and you forfeit the opportunity to capture additional profits. So here I say, dare to be bold, right? If you saw a picture of me, it's not dare to be bald. I'm not saying dare to be bald like me. Dare to be bold by being innovative and leading your team into the future. Tremendous opportunity for our industry. So what are some proposed changes and emerging trends that are going to be impacting our industry? So I just listed out a few here, but cloud-based platforms and digital mobility. I mean, if you're not in the cloud, if you don't have a project management solution, if your estimating is stuck on one person's computer in like an Excel spreadsheet, you're definitely behind the times. So there's cloud-based platforms, digital mobility that's available out there. So you could be on a tablet, right, and have access to your information. Web-based bidding. So, you know, one person is bidding on the same exact platform as the other person, even though they're different parts of the world or on different devices. So that's key. But being in the cloud is key. Advanced modeling, design. So there's like great programs out there that do color rendering plans. Like when I was at TNLA, Joe was showing me like this new color rendering tool on DynaSCAPE, which I love, which is great. But there's advanced modeling design where designs are tied to estimating as well. So you could change something in your design and it changes the estimate. So just really cool features that are coming out to enable better design. Drones are great to do surveying of sites and doing mapping, digital mapping. Advanced analytics. So I've done multiple topics on this. I've spoken at multiple conferences. This is very, very hot topic in our industry. Advanced analytics and how we use data and analytics to make better decisions, real-time decisions. And then wearables and sensors. There's some people that are adopting different wearables, and some companies are using like Google Glass, for example, where their technicians are out in the field and somebody's in the office on the other side, and they can follow what that tech is seeing through their eyes, and they can guide them through, repairing a manifold or fixing a backflow preventer or whatever that may be, programming a timer. So some really cool things that are coming out. Some are in the early stage, but some are in the more advanced stage. But these are definitely things to be aware of and to be paying attention to. But before you go crazy, right? So this is the caveat of it all, is that some companies will get really excited because they'll see an article in the green magazine, or they'll watch a webinar like this or attend a seminar, and then they'll just sporadically go out there and adopt a piece of technology. And what I would say is this: is before you do that, you have to consider what I call the 6 value drivers. So in this book that I wrote, this is the core theme. This triangle here represents the six components that drive value. So on one side, you have purpose and plan. So having a purpose of understanding why your company exists and having a plan to execute makes up strategy. Leadership is all about process and people. Technology falls into process. And finance comes down to profit and cash flow and product. So making sure you have a quality product, making sure it's estimated and priced right. But these 6 drivers have to be invested in and considered in unison, right? You can't just focus only on process and then ignore the people, or focus only on your strategy and ignore the profit. So all these 6 have to be done holistically. But the point of this is that in the center is the customer. So you can't lose touch on the customer. So when you adopt technology, you have to ask yourself, number one, is this going to streamline and add to all these other 6 value drivers? But also, is it going to create a better customer experience for your customer, right? If your process is digitized, if customers are getting real-time communication, real-time updates, if you can make changes to designs really quickly, the customer is going to have a better experience. And that's what it comes down to as well. So don't forget about the customer in the middle of it. But having the right strategy is definitely key. And choosing the right technology is also key. I've worked with a lot of companies and they adopt all different types of technology. And the tough thing is that, you know, people don't know the nuances of technology until they actually install it and start using it. So I know there's like landscape products, like landscape estimating softwares out there and other like estimating and landscape management software that's out there. And I've seen companies implement it and it's horrible. So, I mean, even though there's no like upfront implementation fee and the monthly fee is a lot smaller, they go for it and then they start applying it and then they realize that it doesn't feed into these other 6 value drivers, or that it's like really nuanced and you can't customize things, or it's just a pain to set up like these like templates or kits or whatever when you're estimating, and then they don't use it. So that's what I want to drive home here, is that cheap technology doesn't necessarily mean better technology, and any technology doesn't mean that it fits within your strategy. You have to have a strategy. You have to understand your customer. Then technology is really like the grease and the lubricant that allows you to operate efficiently and effectively. So a little caveat that I want to throw out there, because I've seen so many companies go after the wrong type of software and it's painful. They waste tons of money and it never gets implemented right. So key questions to be answered. I think the first thing, like I mentioned before, it's not about how much is it going to cost us, right? So many people get hung up on the cost. How much is it going to cost us? How much is this going to cost, right? And I say, how much is it costing you to continue to operate the way you're operating, right? So, I mean, the like the fees that we charge our clients, I always tell them, I mean, I could save you our whole entire annual fee on one improvement in your business. If I can improve your pricing or estimating, oh my gosh, I could save you 10 times this. And the same thing is with technology is, so many people get caught up on the price, but in the meantime, they're losing thousands and thousands of dollars on a job. It's crazy to me. So what's it going to cost you if you don't adopt technology? And can you keep a competitive edge? So will you remain competitive in the future? I mean, if you're still doing hand-drawn designs and you're still doing paper checklists, are you going to attract the right people? And are your customers going to look at you and laugh? So it's really, are you going to remain competitive in the future? And then is your investment really driven by those 6 Ps that I showed you in that last diagram? It's going to help prepare you for future storms. And that's why I'm excited we're doing this 3-part series, because I'm going to talk about the financial piece next week, and then I'm going to talk about the strategy piece the following week. So they'll kind of tie all this stuff together. But these are important questions to consider. When it comes down to strategy, right? So I talk about strategy a lot. Strategy is really a plan. It's really an antidote to ward off competition. So we have all these competitive forces that are trying to erode our profitability. And strategy is really about coming up with a plan in order to mitigate against these risks. So technology really must support your strategic goals. So some strategic goals may include to be profitable, to be unique, to be efficient, and to be predictive. And technology should really support these goals. If you're adopting technology, you're going to be able to reduce fee erosion, like in that waterfall chart that I showed you, because you're not going to be making mistakes. You're not going to be doing change orders that are not approved. You're going to be able to make real-time changes to design. Being unique, the customer experience, what the customer experiences with you is really what sets you apart. I mean, let's face it, it's a commoditized business. If you're doing maintenance, maintenance is maintenance. And then also like construction, I mean, you're installing sod, you're installing wall. It's a commoditized business. What sets you apart though is the experience that the customer has. So if your processes are streamlined and you're organized and you're communicating in real time, that's what sets you apart. Being efficient reduces your cost structure. And then finally, to be predictive is capturing the right kind of data and having real-time access to it. So if you're not in the cloud, you can't be predictive and you're being really reactive. So technology has to support strategic goals. The other thing that I often counsel clients on is considering the ROI, the return on investment on technology. So whenever considering technology, whether you're investing in sensors or wearables or a new design program or a cloud-based project management software, or whatever it may be, the big thing is that does the ROI sufficiently justify the investment in technology? So these are the 4 quadrants that I'd consider. So the first question is, by adopting this technology will allow you to efficiently allocate your resources, okay, to strengthen your capabilities. What I mean by that is every company has finite resources, okay? These are all finite resources that they have. Finite resources is people, access to capital, access to equipment. So how do we allocate these finite resources in areas of the business that are going to generate the greatest return? So often I do analysis for companies and I look at all the different services that they're offering and realize where they're doing well and where they're not doing well. And if you can allocate resources, let's just say to one part of your business, let's say you build water features and you're earning super high margins, you want to have the technology to be able to tell you that, number one, and to be able to transfer resources in that area so you could do more of that and make bigger profits. The second thing is your operating model. So your process, your structure, your governance, your people, all these things that go in your operating model. Is technology going to allow you to be faster and to be more cost effective? So if you're not competing on speed, you're gonna be running into some issues in the future. I'm working with a company right now, and the big initiative that we're working on in their design build division is to get the turnaround on their designs reduced down by a certain number of days. So before I got in there, it's taken 2 weeks, sometimes 3 weeks to turn around a design after that initial meeting, a design and a bid. I mean, if you think about the type of society we live in today, I mean, that's absolutely ridiculous. I mean, if you go out and meet with somebody and say, okay, I'll be back in 3 to 4 weeks in the middle of May with a design and a bid, you got to be kidding yourself. I mean, we live in a society, I mean, I know if I go on a website and it freezes for 3 seconds, I'm like, forget about it. I'll just go to Amazon and buy it. So, I mean, we live in this economy where we're very impatient, and competing on speed is really key. So if technology will allow you to be faster and make better decisions while lowering your cost, you're going to be unstoppable. Is it going to allow you to have a stronger workforce, right? And to be more engaged, a workforce that's more engaged. Like I said, they're coming out of school, right? More education. If they don't go to school, they're growing up with more technology at their fingertips, right? They live in a digital world. And then all of a sudden when they come to work, they go to an archaic world. It doesn't work, right? It doesn't work. So we have to be able to engage our employees by creating a world that's suitable to what they're used to. Sometimes older people say, well, Steve, the big thing is that I wonder if millennials will even be able to survive in the future. I say, you're actually asking the wrong question. The real question is, will you survive in a millennial future? That's the real question. So we have to engage our employees by creating a workplace that's exciting to work in. I went and spoke to a room full of teachers, high school teachers recently for the Associated Landscape Contractors of Colorado. And they're wondering how they attract young people to the industry. And it's interesting because the discussion turned around almost this binary decision of whether kids, if they don't go to college, they could go into the trades, into landscaping. And I thought to myself, that's completely wrong. It's not go to college or go into landscaping. I think you go into landscaping and you go to college. I don't think it's binary. I don't think it's one or the other, mutually exclusive. I think you could do both. And if we're creating these exciting companies and we're innovative and cutting edge, we have places for educated people. This isn't a dumb industry. I get very offended when people talk about it like that. I think we are a very savvy industry. We just need to innovate. Okay? We need to innovate. We need to catch up. And there's tremendous opportunities for companies that can do that. Finally, is this technology gonna increase cash flow and profit maximization? If adopting technology is going to create more complexity, okay, in the long term, then it's probably not a good investment. So you have to do something that's very user friendly, and that's going to increase cash flow and profitability. Okay. Also, when we talk about digital solutions, I broke out the 8 main categories that you need to be considering when it comes to digital solutions. So the first thing is design. I mean, look, you have to have a software that is creating cutting edge designs. And design is all about, number one, structure, and it's all about presentation. So what I mean by structure is that you know how to do plant groupings, you know what a good plant layout looks like, what hardscape I mean, you have to get the structure right, the basic design principles. But the presentation is so key. I see some design software out there and the symbols are just, they're elementary. And this is just unacceptable. I mean, so your design software, it has to produce a final product that's going to make you proud, and that's cutting edge. Okay, so that's what I'll say about the design software. If your software isn't producing beautiful designs that you're proud to present, that could be problematic. Okay, if you're still doing hand-drawn designs, because I have clients that still do that, that's fine. But from a speed standpoint, it's going to be hard to scale that. Okay, so digitizing that process is definitely key. Because if you meet with a customer and you need to make a change and you're hand drawing it, then you're like redesigning it, redrawing it, and that's just not feasible. So that's enough on design. Scheduling, schedule optimization, making sure that you have a scheduling tool that can be modified in real time. That's definitely key. So you can plan out your schedule and see things in advance. Time and employee tracking, tracking real-time hours, tracking them to jobs. I think that's absolutely critical. With technology, one thing that I've seen is some of my friends who work for bigger companies, they're actually getting discounts from insurance companies when their employees wear like Fitbits, because if you're exercising more and you're healthy, you're going to be using the doctor less, so they're able to get discounts. So that's where wearables come in. But wearables can track safety and health and location. So these are other things. But time and employee tracking is definitely key to digitize. Like I said, what I mean by digitize is going from a paper process to a digital process, like something that's done on the computer. That's what I mean by digitize. Inventory management, purchase orders, right? Being able to generate purchase orders out in the field to track everything going in. If you have irrigation, if you do irrigation repair and maintenance, making sure that you could track parts. Contract management is definitely key, like making sure you are managing change orders. That's the biggest thing. So many contractors that I talk with, so many of them, they don't even get signed contracts, which is crazy to me. And yeah, they might have been able to get away with it for a long period of time, but eventually it'll catch up to them. But contract management is key. Getting signed contracts, getting signed change orders, so everything is written down and tracked in a digital manner. Quality control, being able to like annotate plans, make markup plans, being able to do quality control in real time is key. Accounting and financial reporting, this is absolutely critical. It is absolutely amazing to me how many companies struggle with this. And when we go in there and we help them with creating forecasts. I'm not talking about budgets. I'm talking about forecasts and being more future oriented. And when we look at pricing and when we look at cash flow and we look at ways to improve their working capital, and we're just helping them being more financially intelligent companies, it's amazing how fast their profit skyrockets. This is absolutely critical. I mean, you got millions of dollars if you're a mid-sized company. You got millions of dollars coming through your company, and some people, they just don't have a grasp on where it's going. So you need a digital solution that can track accounting and financial reporting in real time. I mean, you can't come back 2 months later and say, "Oh, guess what happened last April? We lost money." That's way too late. I can't even remember what I was doing 2 weeks ago. So it has to be in real time. And then document management, like I said, maintaining version control so people aren't working off old plans is definitely key. So action steps. So how do we get started? How do we move forward from here? So when considering technology, these are the steps that you should run through. First, start with strategy, okay? Develop a customer-centered, future-oriented strategy. That's the first step. So understanding who your customers are, okay, what's important to them, what your customer values are. I don't care what your company values are. I care about what your company's values are. What do they value? Do they value speed? Do they value customization? Do they value personalization? What do they value? And then what are the activities you're going to perform in order to deliver that value? So you have to start with strategy. You have to determine, where are we going to play? How are we going to compete in that area? And how are we going to win? And that's where strategy comes in. After you develop strategy, okay, then you look at your operating model. And this is how you start examining, okay, what are our resources? What are people resources, our capital resources, our equipment resources? What capabilities do we have? What capabilities do we lack? And what are the value drivers? And this is really where technology comes in, where you say, hey, we have a big gap in estimating, right? We're using Excel right now, and we're producing millions of dollars in bids. We have a big gap here in our operating model. This is where you fill it in with technology. You don't start the other way around. You don't just say, hey, what technology should we adopt? And you just adopt random technology. You have to have a strategy and a game plan, right? It's like, it'd be like me driving from Colorado to New York and just getting in the car and saying, hey, this looks like a fun car, or this looks like a cool bicycle, or this looks like a cool motorcycle. I'm going to take a trip to New York. I mean, I have to have a game plan, map it out. Okay, I'm going to stop here. I'm going to stop there, right? This is what I'm going to do if I run into problems. That's what strategy does. It gets me to New York, but in a more methodical way. Okay. The vehicle that I choose is going to be based on the distance, the route I'm traveling, the speed at which I want to travel. That's the technology that I'm talking about. Number 3, focus on ROI. Okay. So focus on the areas where you're going to have the biggest improvement. I mean, it'd be ridiculous to adopt a piece of technology on one part of the business, and at the same time, you don't have technology around estimating and pricing. That'd be absolutely ludicrous. Okay, a 1% increase in price results in a 19% increase in profit. Okay, we're going to talk about that next week. But focusing on ROI in the biggest areas for improvement, this is really where you should start. And then finally, execute strategically. So you have to build a team that can adopt this technology, right, and build a culture that is into learning and growth. So, and this will allow you to execute strategically. Okay, when it comes to executing these 4 steps, you have to really look at the speed at which implementation occurs. So oftentimes people say, yeah, Steve, that's great. You know, we're gonna slowly roll out our strategy, or we're slowly going to evolve, you know, over the next 5 years. And I think that's the wrong approach. So when it comes down to it, thinking big, starting small, and acting quickly, this feeds into this chart here. So on the left-hand side, you see this ramping up period, this evolution. So this is the period you're attending webinars and you're gaining an education, or you're reading articles, or you're doing research, or you're talking to great people like Joe and understanding the industry and what the trends are and what the technology solutions are. This is the evolutional period. Then you start identifying, okay, these are some gaps that we have, and this is what our strategy is going to be. Then you move into strategic change. This happens quickly, right? This is full steam ahead. Doesn't mean it has to be a big initiative, but you implement it quickly. It's like if you're rolling out a piece of software, you don't roll it out over 12 months. You got to get in there. You just got to jump in and start building out your estimating modules and get going on it. So that's a strategic change period. And then you go flat, revolution. You get people trained, you get people used to the technology, and you innovate. And then this cycle repeats all over again. The worst thing you could do is to have nothing, just a flat period of evolution where you have no change. The second worst thing you could do is to always have change. I mean, imagine how confused your employees would be and how you destroy morale if every week you introduce your employees to some new initiative, some flavor of the day. Hey guys, this week we're implementing this technology. A month later, oh, now we're actually doing this technology. And that's where you have to be smart up front about the right type of technology. I can't stress enough. You have to have a strategy and you have to invest in really good technology. Think long term, really good technology. Okay, and you'll be able to tell when you get in there. It's not about the lowest monthly fee technology or the no implementation cost technology for a nominal fee. That's not always the best. Sometimes there may be products out there that are great like that, but other times the cheap software is really, really expensive over time. So adopting the right technology, but doing it in a strategic manner is key. The final point that I want to leave with you is that when I go through these types of webinars, or I'm teaching seminars or teaching workshops, or I'm working with companies, it's a lot, right? It's a lot. And when you're going along, I know you guys are out there, you're bidding on jobs, you probably have a stack of bids to get out the door for fall. You're dealing with customers, you're dealing with employee issues, you're running this business, you're trying to manage finances, and then you hear Steve say you guys need to adopt technology, and it's like, oh my gosh, I feel so overwhelmed. How do I get started in this? So I say this: think big, okay? Think big. Begin with the end in mind. Think about where you want to take your company over the next 5 to 10 years. Okay, so think big, have a big vision. But then, this is key, start small. Pick out one or two things. Like I said, you may say, hey, we need to get our finances in order, or we need to develop a strategy, or we need a estimating solution, or hey, we already have an estimating solution. We need to do some 360 type comprehensive project management software. Whatever it may be, start small and then move quickly. Okay? So many companies that I work with, they get this wrong. They think big, they start big, and then they move slowly. They act slowly. So follow this recipe, and it helps you break things down in bite-sized, manageable pieces where you can actually implement and start making changes. If you want to boost employee morale, if you want to attract people and keep them around, start making changes. What kills employee morale is when companies do a bunch of talking and they never do anything. They're just a talking organization versus a doing organization. So think big, start small, start making changes now, right now, today. Start making changes right now and act quickly. Even if they're small changes, act quickly. Okay, don't stop talking about it. Stop trying to formulate plans. Remember, build, measure, learn. Build, measure, learn. You don't have to get it perfect right up front, but you need to be making continual change. So that is the recipe. Okay, what's coming ahead? And I just want to throw this out there to some people because when I speak at conferences, I don't like to self-promote, and so I usually don't say anything. And then I look at my evaluations, and people give me bad scores because they say, oh, you should talk more about products and services. And I say, okay. Then I do a little self-promotion, then people give me bad scores because they say, oh, you just talk about yourself. And so it's a lose-lose game. So I just threw this slide in there to try to satisfy both ends of the spectrum. But we got this really cool program. It's called Strategic Financial Leadership. This webinar gives you a little teaser of what the program's all about. But we're putting one together for the winter. More details to come, but this just kind of gets you plants a seed in your head. Strategic Financial Leadership. It's going to be a multi-day program where top industry people get together. They learn tools and best practices that will allow them to separate themselves and differentiate themselves from their competitors in the landscape industry. We have a strict cutoff because we want it to be very engaging in the classroom. But this is a great thing that's coming down the line. So anyways, just wanted to throw that out there. If you want more information, you could shoot me an email or shoot Joe an email, but more to come on that. And then finally, time for Q&A. I'll say this: on the left-hand side, you'll see my email. Shoot me an email if there's something that you think I should take out of this webinar in the future. If it's boring, shoot me an email. Let me know. If there's parts you liked, great. If there's things that I can help you with, I'd love to help you. I love this industry. So shoot me an email. Connect on LinkedIn with me. I constantly post stuff on LinkedIn, but connect on LinkedIn. You'll find me on there. But yeah, reach out and connect. But I'll open it up to Q&A and turn it over for questions. Turn it over to Joe here and
Yeah,
see
Steve,
what
hey,
we got.
that was some incredible stuff. Um, I was on the edge of my seat watching the screen with your presentation. I've seen the slide deck, and but hearing you go through it, and talking about um, how to deal with millennials and profit erosion and different types of technology with drones and wearables, really had me intrigued. And I talk to landscape business owners all the time about this stuff. So that was even really helpful for me. Um, you hit on a point, and someone brought it up. Landscape programs all over the U.S., and it's a problem in Canada too. Um, Landscape programs in colleges and universities have significantly declining enrollment, and it's a North America wide problem. Um, and this question's been asked a ton of times, and national associations are trying to deal with it. How do we become that profession that young people want to get into and not just see it as a fallback because they can't do anything else?
That's a great question. Let me just start off by saying, applause to everybody who's on the webinar today. I mean, investing an hour today, this is where it starts. This is where it begins here. I mean, you guys are committed to learning and growth, to innovation. So I applaud you guys for that. We have to change the story in the industry. I mean, the Army dealt with the same exact thing after Vietnam. So after Vietnam, nobody wanted to go in the industry, or they didn't want to go into the Army. But when the Army said, you know what, we need to change our story, that's when they started recruiting. I mean, and that's really where it's like, an army of one, or become something, uh, the proud, the few, all these different slogans about, really what you can create and what you could transform your life into, really came out of changing the story. And I think the same thing's true with the landscape industry. Like I said before, I love this industry. And if you think about the perception that's out there, that's what's killing us. I mean, when we're not innovating and we're super archaic, or we're not following up with customers, or like we're doing shady design and construction, that hurts our story. But when we change the story, and when we can be innovators, and we can say, look, we are strategic financial leaders. We're smart people. We're not a bunch of dum-dums running around with a wheelbarrow and a truck and a mower. We're actually creating great careers for people. We're creating beautiful landscapes, outdoor spaces. That's when it becomes more attractive to people. It is, Joe. I mean, it's a big issue that's out there. It's a big problem to tackle, but I think it starts with changing our story, and it starts with us.
Exactly, and really well said. I'm not sure if I could have said it better myself. This kind of leads into another question. Um, how do you recommend blending that with an aging workforce and trying to implement technology into the business, and you have that aging staff that is really reluctant to change, which makes, as a business owner, trying to implement technology very difficult. And we've seen it here a lot where business owners made a decision to move forward with an enterprise-wide level solution that handles the design, the estimating, the sales management, the production, the timesheets, the billing, but they can't get their staff to adopt it because they're just unwilling inside the organization to change the process. How do you blend the aging workforce with the up and coming workforce to create that optimal organization?
Great question. I think the answer lies in Generation X. And what I mean by that is you have the millennials and the younger generations before them, and then you have the baby boomers and the older generation. What lies in the middle is Generation X. The older generation, they have tremendous wisdom and experience trapped in their head. And then the younger generation, they have this phenomenal comfort level with technology, but they lack the wisdom and experience. The Generation X, right in the middle there, that's really the bridge. So I think it's building that team, right? And having some champions in the firm who can bridge that gap between the baby boomers who have all this wisdom and the younger generation who have the technical capabilities to implement the software but lack the wisdom. And I think that's really the bridge. Look, there are some people that just simply don't want to adopt technology. Some landscape companies that I work with, they respect that. I mean, so one company I was working with, their main business development person, they were bringing in about $5 million a year in business. So obviously it's not feasible to say, hey, if you don't adopt this technology, you're fired, right? That would not be a good strategic move. So they ended up hiring an assistant who helped this person input the digital, to input digital data. So they incurred a little bit extra expense, but it was worth it to them because they obviously didn't want to lose this person and they refused to adopt. But I mean, the end of the day is you have to be hard and strict on the process so you could be soft on the people. And if you can't let people hold you back. I mean, that'd be
Yeah.
that'd be ridiculous. And you see that with companies like Blockbuster and Borders and Sears, right? Look at all the malls, Macy's, all these other companies that don't adopt new business models. They just don't survive. And the same thing is with yours. It's not a matter of, oh, should we do it or not? It's, are you committing to surviving and thriving, or are you committing to slowly dying?
Yeah. Yeah. And, Steve, I was recently watching, Chef Ramsay, Gordon Ramsay has this show. It's called Hotel Hell. And he was working with this hotel, and they had totally lost sight of what was really important. And he had the management of the company sitting around the table. And he asked the question, who is the most important person at the company here? And the the restaurant manager said it was the owner. Um, the owner said it was his cleaning staff, and Ramsey said, "You guys have totally lost sight. The most important person at your company is the customer." And so I mean, that's powerful, and for the management team at that hotel to not see that is also, it says a lot. But when it comes to your process and how you do business inside your landscape company, you can't lose focus of who the most important person there is, because without the customer, you have no business.
Absolutely, that's very smart.
Yeah. Steve, it's been incredible. It's been a really intense hour. I really appreciate your time, and everybody on the line here, I think absolutely appreciates the effort and the value that you got out of that we got out of your talk today. I just want to bring some attention. We had some promotional partners as part of our marketing of the webinar series. Really helpful for us to get the word out, and really helped us get the word out just beyond our borders of Canada and the United States. So Total Landscape Care Magazine, Pennsylvania Landscape and Nursery Association, New Jersey Landscape Contractors, Landscape Alberta, the Minnesota Nursery Landscape Association, um, the Manitoba Nursery Landscape Association, Landscape Management Magazine, BC Nursery Landscape Association, the Canadian Nursery Landscape Association, Landscape Nova Scotia, and Ohio Nursery Landscape Association. Everybody, thank you so much for your promotion, getting the word out to your communities. We really appreciate it. Um, super helpful. Next week, the same time, next Thursday, September 14th at 1:30 p.m. Eastern Standard, we're looking at part two of the three-part webinar series, Financial Principles Landscape Companies Must Know to Boost Cash Flow. And I know that you're going to want to join us live for that. We are recording all of the sessions just so that, for your convenience, if you had to bow out or you're not able to join us, you will be able to get this as a recording. This is one that you're going to want to be able to see live. And for everyone that is interested, I'm Joe Salemi, Product Marketing Manager with DynaSCAPE Software. I have my email address here if you want to get a hold of me directly. Happy to answer any questions. And I know Steve provided his email address if you have any questions directly for him. Everybody, thank you so much for joining us. Steve, thank you so much. We'll see you next week.
All right. Thank you, everybody. Thanks, Joe.
Take care.